All right, everybody. Welcome to my analysis of episode 3, Immigrants. Um, this was a good episode. I liked it a lot. I also did feel, though, like there wasn't quite as much TD stuff in it. I wouldn't even say it's necessarily a bridge episode. I just think that this is more serving, the Maggie story than doing a whole lot of foreshadowing. There was a few things, though, that I'll go over. And we did get to see Herschel, like not Maggie's son, but her father in this, which was really fun. And I think that that was important. So let's just go ahead and get started. We see Maggie kill a walker out on the street before she goes into the bar, asking for Negan. And um, Dillard kind of gives her a rundown on, how a lot of good can come from nothing, his food chain thing he does with the maggots. Um, Nothing's wasted. And she says that her father had that same philosophy about farming. Um, says if you treat it right, everything's always going to pay you back every time. And that's the only promise left in the world, except that shoelaces always wear out before the shoes, which is interesting because they've used shoelaces, like especially colored shoelaces before, to do symbolism. So I think it's interesting that they're drawing attention to that. Then the walker at the bar kind of starts to come loose, like he tries to go after Maggie, and he asks for the duct tape, and this walker is like falling apart. Its arm is getting torn off. So Negan comes in and he asks him to hold him down. He says no. Then he and Maggie go talk. He says he saw the light show, which he meant the Statue of Liberty. And she says the Dama killed herself, and he's, obviously he doesn't admit to anything there. At some point, she's going to find out that he killed her, and she's going to be mad. Um, anyway, so then she says that they are planting, like trying to clear Central Park. We have a serious reference here. She wants his help with the farming, but he is not interested. Then we see her and a lot of people with the scythes trying to clear everything. But Negan is trying to get Dillard to step up and kill walkers rather than hanging out with them, right? This part was kind of funny. I laughed a few times. He just wants him to do it to see that he can do it. And he says he wants to be able to count on him if, things go sideways. And Dillard makes like he's going to, and then he stops, and says, nope, F this, I'm done. He can take out plenty of deadies. Anyway, Negan says they're not people, which is a callback to Lizzie. And we're going to see later on that I feel like, I don't know, like Dillard, he seems to be a good guy, and I do like him as a character so far. And we have the whole backstory about him being a detective, an undercover cop anyway. Um, but I still feel like it's not going to end well. And he's definitely a callback or a repeat of Lizzie a lot. So even just saying they're not people, that was a line that we used around Lizzie, and so that doesn't it doesn't bode well. Let's just put it that way. And he gets after Negan and says, the people in your video games aren't real, and how is it different for me, basically. So then the flare goes up that there are people coming, and of course they get hordes of people. Negan and Dillard show up, but he says it's not for the same reasons. They're just there to protect their stuff. They get a lot of people who are hurt, and upon talking to these people, they find out that they were fighting with another group out of Newark, and that those people hurt them, beat on them, and burn their place down. So they take everybody to the hospital who needs to and start, trying to help these people. Um, Negan asks if they're going to come after the people who attack them, if they will come after them, and they basically say yes. But Maggie and Renata are handling things, and Negan is still not happy that they're letting people in and going to help them at the hospital. He says that Renata's going to crack, and when she does, it's going to be bad and it's going to be up to Maggie. And that's interesting. I don't know if that's a foreshadow. It may be, but Renata seems pretty solid. So this also could be just Negan being really pessimistic. So this was one piece that was really interesting to me, and I'm not entirely sure what to make of it yet. They were using green, purple, and red to mark the patients, basically as a triage, right? Green are the ones that definitely can be saved and treated. Um, well, okay, so he says if they can talk, they're purple. I must not have gotten all of that. The red ones are the ones that are really bad and maybe going to die, and so they need to be handcuffed to the bed. And then they're putting X's right in the middle of their foreheads. I mean, how's that for a Team Delusional symbol? A green X. Um, and this guy, I don't know. I can't decide entirely if he's a Beth proxy. It's not terribly close. He is in the hospital. He does have an arm injury. His arm is broken. And we did see Beth in the cast, right? So that's similar. And then this boy dies. Herschel's upset about it at the end. And they're not even sure exactly what he died from. You know, Louise says it could be an embolism, it could be something completely unrelated. But anyway, it's just interesting that they put a green X on his forehead and he has the arm injury. And then he ends up dying in the hospital, you know, which, you know, we don't believe Beth actually died, but to everyone else, it seems that way. And Herschel's really the star of the show here. So this domino is an interesting symbol. Herschel doesn't really know what dominoes is because he's never played it, right? But this kid has a domino that has sixes on it, and he says it's unlucky, which, you know, again, that's probably a foreshadow of his death. But we still see the domino at the end, so I'm assuming this is something Herschel's going to start maybe carrying around or something. It was, I mean, it was clearly a symbol. They focused on it a lot. But we also have the luck, you know, symbolism here. Maybe your luck's starting to turn around. They talk about luck a little bit. He says we followed the light. Herschel tells him it's a good place. So then Renata and Negan and Dillard are both humming Ride of the Valkyries, which is funny. And she tells them not to shoot unless she tells them to, right? And they say, whatever you say, boss lady. But she tells them to put their weapons down. And as it turns out, the people from Newark who come in are also hurt. And this was actually not just one group attacking another. It was a war between two groups where both of them were making war on each other. Both of them were being harmed. And, you know, the first group just got there first. So they bring them in and they realize, because both groups are accusing each other, that they've got enemies to treat side by side. So this is what I mean. Like, I just feel like this whole episode, it's really interesting from like a sociological standpoint. It's a really fascinating episode where they are trying to get people to work together and, you know, bury their hatchets and make peace between them. And it's interesting how they go about doing that. But I feel like this is very much in service of Maggie's arc and building up this colony in New York and all of that. You know, so we're not leaning as much into necessarily, you know, anything that would be Beth related. So they're going to put up guards. We have to figure out who can stay. And they constantly go back and forth about whether this is going to really blow up on them. They're going through a lot of their supplies. Okay, so there is a lot of alcohol here, right, in this episode, which of course that always reminds us of still. Alcohol is the best sedative, and of course, Dillard has it because of the bar. And Negan, of course, does not want to give the two of them at all. But it's really Dillard who cracks, and you know he says, "Well, clearly these people are in pain." Yeah, we've got Negan saying very Neganish lines here. So he finally says, "Fine, go get the whiskey." Um, Renata is talking to him, and Negan says the real reason he's there is so that Dillard is interacting with people more than corpses. And so she says, you're doing this for him. You really don't care about these people beyond that. And he's like, nope. But then she talks to him. And anyway, you can tell he's kind of starting to respect Renata grudgingly, you know, but that's Negan. So he's in favor of picking a side, treating them, and then making the other side leave because that'll create loyalty. And, you know, interestingly, he's not entirely wrong. It's just that the other side you'll create an enemy from, or, you know, you have to kill them all or something, and neither of those are great moral options. So, I mean, when it comes down to it, he's just not willing to do the work to house them all and make them get along. And that is much harder work than just picking a side and killing all the rest, right? And she says, well, the safe play is to kill all of them, which, of course, he's impressed by that. But then she points out that they need people, right? And so anyway, then we have the two leaders, this lady and a man from this guy here. And I don't remember their names right off the top of my head, but they're the ones who are fighting because they're leaders in their communities. One of them from the Newark community and then from the first one that arrived. And she's angry that his people are being treated before hers. So she picks up some scissors here. How interesting, some scissors, much like Grady. And they even look like they might have a yellow handle here. And she threatens the doctor. But after a minute, I mean, she's just wanting him to help her people rather than the other people. And he says, I'm going to help both people. Now, at this point, there was a lot of the lights strobing on and off because the power keeps going off, so it was really hard to get screenshots. So apologies if these screenshots aren't great, but Maggie grabs a what do you call that? Like a IV rack and hits the lady with it so that she can, get her away from Luis and everything. And then they just have to take control because chaos is starting to break out in the hospital. But they tell everyone to leave who doesn't have to be there. And of course, Herschel takes over doing a lot of the medical stuff. They post extra guards. And then Negan takes both of these leaders with him. They realize that, this is Dillard arriving with the whiskey. And a lot of these people need to be ventilated, and they don't have enough people to ventilate them manually. But Herschel does intubation through the throat. They called it something, I don't remember what it was. And he actually makes it, which is impressive. From what I understand, intubations are actually really difficult. It's a skill that takes most med students a while to master. So I don't know if that's realistic or not, but I think it's possible, and he does it. He's good at it. Everybody's impressed. Everything seems to be going okay. And then it felt like we kept coming back to Maggie and Renata going back and forth about whether they should be doing this and what they should do. I understand the doubt and the second guessing because you totally would, but it felt like that took up a lot of the episode. Um, Maggie says, contrary to Negan, anybody who tells you the solution's simple is answering the wrong question. Picking one side, killing the other, that's easy. I don't know if there's a right choice, but if there is, you're going to make it. And, it's just at one point, maybe it's not right here, she says, creating a community like this is the hardest thing you will ever do. So, of course, it's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. Don't expect it to be. Then we have a part where a lot of the patients in their ER start dying, and it's just because they couldn't get them treatment fast enough. When the lights go out, they don't have breathing machines anymore. But it felt a lot like 401 when Patrick went crazy and started killing people in the cell block. Like it felt a lot like season 4, and obviously we're going to get some flashbacks to season 4 eventually. Um, Negan then is trying to get the two leaders to get along, basically, and he's even threatening them with the bat. So in this scene, he does reference Rick and he doesn't reference him by name, but he says that he used to ask people 3 questions that would decide whether or not they would stay as part of the community. So we have a Rick reference here, and just team family in general, because obviously Rick wasn't the only one who asked those, but he's the one who was leading and came up with them. But he says, I'm not in the mood to ask questions. And so the interesting thing here is that they didn't need the Rick reference at all. I mean, why reference him and then not ask the questions, right? They could have just said, okay, this is what I want to do, And so they put that in there purposely, even though they didn't actually make use of it in a literal way in the scene. So instead, they're going to play piñata. He's going to let Dillard swing Lucille around as though he's going to hit one of these people. And he's telling them, one of you needs to volunteer to leave or talk to me about what's going on. And these two are stubborn. You would think that would work, especially eventually when Dillard comes pretty close to them, but they do not budge. They do not give in, which is interesting. So, um, Maggie catches them coming out of there, and he says, look, neither of them are innocent. This war is not going to end. Neither of them is budging, that sort of thing. And then he wants to go down and check the tanks because the lights keep going out off and on. And so he says, you're so going to owe us. Let's see, this part, somebody died, and Herschel was doing CPR, and Maggie gets way freaked out when he tries to do mouth to mouth. But, understandably, she doesn't want him to get bitten if this person suddenly turns. And they do eventually turn. But here we see the flashback to season 4 when Herschel was taking care of people in the prison. And I thought this was really nice and this was really sweet that we're seeing more callbacks now to season 4. Interesting, right? But unfortunately, the patient does turn and they have to put her down. So a lot of the episode is just them taking care of people, putting out fires. But this is where this guy wakes up and there's a walker chewing on his foot. So that's a lot like, the whole Patrick situation in 401 as well. But they kill him and then they have to saw off this guy's leg. I did think this was a little bit unrealistic. Maggie said she didn't have anything to take care of the pain, so she punches him and knocks him out. And that's fine, but he would have woke up again the instant the blade cut into his his leg. I mean, you're not keeping him sedated. You just knocked him out, and people who are in pain are going to wake right up, you know? And then when you see him start sewing the leg, it's like the guy doesn't actually wake up. And it's going, yeah, no, he would still be screaming at that point. But, you know, that's okay. It's just not the most realistic when it comes to the pain. Down in the tanks, they're putting people in. And then the guy that we just saw, I don't know his name, but he's one of Maggie's people, this guy. He ends up falling into the tank when, you know, the walker wakes up. And then we see Dillard step up exactly like Negan wanted him to and stab this walker many times, multiple times. And then when he tries to pull the other guy out of the tank, that guy has died, unfortunately, and turned, and so he stabs him too. And Negan says, "We should have stayed at the bar. It's good to get out of the town with you, man." Then we just see more of the, see, these are the dark ones when the lights would go out, but more of the hospital. A fire starts that Maggie has to go put out. And this lady, Maggie kept trying to get her to help, but because these aren't her people, they're her enemies, she didn't want to, but she does step up and help as well. So we're seeing some people who are letting go of their anger and just kind of trying to be better about things, which is good. After all of that, Luis comes to talk to Herschel. "What's up, Doc?" Which is a rabbit reference, if nothing else. Um, he talks about the kid that died from the broken arm. We could tell them it could have been an embolism from the fracture. He says you're always going to lose people, patients, and it's always going to hurt. Which is a little bit of a callback, I guess, to Beth and the whole, you know, the pain doesn't go away, you just make room for it. But he says to focus on the people that you saved. And there's kind of some fun stuff about how Herschel's just being thrown into the deep end with all this medical stuff. And then Negan tells them a little bit more about the two leaders. Um, and she says, "Well, the war does have to end. As long as the groups are fighting each other, Manhattan is at risk. And yes, letting them battle to the death, that is a solution, but it can't be the only one." And Maggie says, "Well, we got to give them something to fight for so that they're not focusing on how much they hate each other." So they take them out to the community and ask or excuse me, to like Central Park and ask everybody to pick up the scythes and not kill each other, but farm. And we start to see people do this. A few of them go ahead and pick up these scythes and, um, you know, start working together to clear the farmland. And then they talk to the two leaders again and says, "I don't know what happened across the river, but we gotta, you know, be better about this here." And then I didn't get pictures of all of it, but they let the two of them go and give them scythes, and it doesn't show it, but it seems like maybe, you know, they're gonna fall in line and help with the farming. But we find out actually that that is not the case. This is them talking about Herschel. And then he says, "How many more coming in?" And she says, "That's it." And they bring in those two leaders, and both of them were dead. So, in other words, they tried to kill each other with the scythes. They did not actually make peace. And so Maggie and Negan just had to let them kill each other, but their people did not choose that. So, in a way, Negan was kind of right and got what he wanted. I mean, I guess if you have people who are just set on killing each other, then, you know, they were never going to be able probably to thrive and stay in the community anyway. And they chose what they chose, you know. But they say 146 out of 148 chose hope. There's good people here. We saved a few of them today. They're alive because you lit that light, but he's thinking of others they've lost, and the idea of losing anyone else makes him sad, so his sister comforts him. But in the end, he says, "Yeah, it's going to be okay. I look forward to looking forward again." We see Maggie talking to Herschel, and I thought this was really cool. She's encouraging him and telling him how proud she is of him, which is good. And then she talks about her father, who she was thinking of when she was watching him earlier, and so much of his goodness is in you. And she gives him the watch. I mean, this was just kind of sweet and fun, and you know, to see the watch passed on. First, you know, we saw it from Herschel to Glenn, and now from Maggie to Herschel. So I thought that was a really cool thing. And then they embrace. Now, this is a cool shot. This really isn't anything except showing that it's nighttime, but I just thought it was a really cool overhead shot of the city and the moon. And then we see Maggie and Renata talking again. She says, "You're the best leader this place could have." And Renata says, "You kept us all safe. We're building the place we dreamed of. It's actually happening," which just makes it scarier. And Maggie says, "I've been in so many places that didn't make it. This one's different. And if we can't make it work with everything we've got going for us, I don't think we ever will." And Renata says, "Yeah, but we made it through today. Tomorrow's going to look so different with this many people. There's just so much more to consider." They said the hospital is almost out of meds and methane, so they're going to need to find some supplies. They're going to have to schedule power outages, that sort of thing. So it's just logistics, but this is what it takes to build a community like that. This. They once again are drinking alcohol, but they say it's champagne that doesn't taste very good. So they go and get, I assuming, what is beer instead. So we do have a lot of alcohol references in this episode. Um, and then we have another one here, Holy Meth Lab, Crackman, what is happening? Negan is building a still and he's going to make some moonshine. So once again, we have callbacks to season 4. And this one specifically is to Beth and Daryl in season 4. So that's fun to see. We may have lost the whiskey, but we're not gonna run out of booze. And then he says, "What's going on in the bar? I'm so glad you asked." So he takes him in, and a lot of the people are here hanging out in the bar. And he says, "Don't get used to it. I'm just giving the Xbox the night off. You were on a bit of a roll today." And he wants him to get laid. So he says, "Pick a girl, any girl." And he says, "I should probably change my clothes because I feel bad." So he goes to change. And I was so sure that we were going to get something really ominous here about Dillard. And it is ominous, but it's not like some deep, dark secret he's hiding. It's actually not anything different than what we've seen before. But we are seeing it from his point of view, as though we're in his head. And he actually does hear the walkers speaking, which doesn't mean that they actually are speaking, but he thinks he hears them speaking. And it's interesting what the walkers are saying. That man is no good. And she's saying, he's trying to take you away from me. And he's telling her to stop and knock it off. And I'm sorry, I get so jealous. Stay with me tonight. He says, I said, I can't. I miss you. I love you. I mean, yeah, it's creepy. And it doesn't necessarily make him more sinister, although, I mean, I have to wonder if maybe this is what they were going for with Lizzie. Like, she kind of did the same thing. She said they were her friends, and you got the sense that maybe I mean, we know she talked to them, but maybe she could hear them talking back. And yeah, it's interesting. And I almost wonder if it would be something where, I mean, it's not just that this guy happens to have the same thing Lizzie did or whatever, but maybe there's just always going to be a small percentage of people who react this way. So it's really interesting, and yeah, it's definitely pretty creepy. And I still don't know if that means he's going to go off the rails at some point. I am kind of thinking that he will, but we'll have to wait and see. So that's all the screenshots that I took. Like I said, I didn't see a whole lot jump out at me from this episode. It was still a really enjoyable episode. I liked watching it. Mostly it was, the markers, putting the X's on the forehead, the one kid that had the arm injury that died, and then all the alcohol references, and of course seeing Herschel. Those were the big things. And yeah, but and I mean, remember, I think it was last week, I talked about how it seemed like the first episode and then the last 2 of the season were the ones that might be more Beth focused. The second to last one, I think, is going to be the AU episode. So the ones in between are more I said it was going to be more focused on what they're doing for Dead City and, what Maggie and Renata are doing to build up the community, that sort of thing. So I think we're just in the middle of that, and we're probably going to get fewer Beth references until we get to the end of the season. But there's still a few, and it's still fun to watch. And I did laugh several times, mostly at Negan and Dillard, and they do have kind of a fun energy together, the way they play off each other. They're definitely fun to watch together. So let's see. The after the episode thing was kind of a deep dive into Renata, but I didn't see anything there that jumped out at me super big either. It was just kind of a fun exploration of her character, and the actress talked about her a little bit. So yeah, I think that's all I've got for this video, and I will do some more later in the week, do some asks and YouTube comments, and talked about what's been happening this week. But yeah, so I will be back in a few days with another video, and I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and I will talk to you soon.